Hello, my name is Blaziken, and welcome to my Yae Miko video. In this video, we're going to go over her builds, her teams, how she plays, and of course, how strong I think she is. With that being said, let's just jump right into the video. So, starting off with her weapons, honestly, pretty much every single 5-star weapon option is pretty solid other than Everlasting Moonglow. Of course, Kakuro's Verity is going to be your best option. If you have shielding, you can use Memory of Dust, otherwise probably not an amazing option. Still pretty decent stat stick though. Oathsworn Eye is pretty solid. This really allows you to use sets like Emblem if you really want to, so that's pretty cool. And Widsith is an excellent option for 4 stars. And if you really don't have any of those and you're really hurting for options and you want a craftable version, Mappamari is pretty solid. Hakushin Ring's okay. Those are solid options. And if you're going for a full support like Tenacity build, then of course Thrilling Tales of Dragonslayer is going to be your best bet. On to the artifacts. It's pretty simple. 2 Thundering Fury, 2 attack percent is probably her best set in my opinion. Of course, if you're using an ER weapon, you could go into your emblems and whatnot, but without an ER weapon, I think it's pretty tough to build emblem to a good degree. And of course, emblem, you do need to be able to burst off a cooldown, so it depends on your team and whatnot. This is just generally the best catch-all set. Of course, this is pretty weak overall, so if you just have really bad options for the set, you could just throw on whatever you have with good substats and that should work. And for, lower cost builds, you can go for Thundering Fury with a bunch of EM just to get really good electro charge damage. And you can also build her for full support using Tenacity. And yeah, generally speaking, of course, her stats are pretty simple. Crit rate, attack percent, electro damage bonus, just the normal stuff. Just normal DPS things, honestly. Talent-wise, I would level these two equally, unless you're not using her burst for some reason, but it's pretty important to use her burst for her damage. 3 E's into a burst into another 3 E's is generally going to be your rotation, and these are both quite decent for damage dealing, so equal leveling here is probably the way I'd go, and of course you can ignore the normals. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's just jump right into the teams. I think I gave Yae a pretty decent chance. I leveled her down to 8, I waited that extra week for it, and it was okay. She's a sub DPS, she deals a decent amount of damage as a sub DPS. Her burst can hit fairly hard, but she does have trouble keeping it up if she's alone, no double electro and things like that. It's not great. And of course, she does take a pretty long time to set up her damage, right? 3 E's into a Q into 3 more E's. It takes a minute. She's usable, but don't find her particularly amazing right now. I will say that my build isn't particularly amazing, right? I'm using Widsith, my talents aren't level 10, I guess. And for a character like Yae and the teams I'm playing her on, right? They're all very rotation based, right? They have long rotations, like 20-second rotations. And the builds can have a large impact because if you can save yourself a rotation, you could potentially save like 20 seconds, right? And that means that a small stat change can have a big impact, but at the same time, a small stat change can also have no impact, right? It kind of like jumps basically depending on whether or not it allows you to kill with 1 rotation less, and yeah. It kind of depends on the content you're running also, of course, because 1 rotation versus Ruin Guard is completely different from a rotation against Hilichurl, right? So it's really all over the place. Now, of course, I think that Yae's best pairing is with Raiden. Raiden is just amazing with her, right? My Raiden is C6, so she is dealing a lot more damage than she should at C0. And of course, the fact that C6 reduces the cooldowns of Yae means that their rotations really line up very well. The cooldowns line up really well, I should say, and that's a pretty big deal. And I mean, my Raiden's definitely carrying the team, but to be fair, Yae's damage isn't negligible. But yeah, basically the concept is pretty simple. Raiden is really good at batterying for Yae, and of course, having double electro means if you're doing any reactions, you're going to get a bunch of particles, and yeah, it means that you should have bursts up for your whole team very often. And of course, this allows Yae to burst off of cooldown, which is really important for her to really maximize her damage in my opinion. And well, when you're using characters like Eula on the team as well, it really makes the rotation much more seamless because otherwise there's downtime between just Raiden and Yae. But if you also weave in the Eula rotation, then suddenly you don't have any real cooldowns, right? You do, but not anywhere near as much. And of course, the big thing is that with Electro Resonance with Raiden, Eula's energy recharge requirement goes down a lot, which means you can focus more on actual damage stats. It's quite decent overall. Although, I will say that, to be fair, I don't think Yae is necessary on this team comp at all. But, she can do a decent amount. If you're using her on this team though, I'd probably go with Tenacity instead of her Too Glad to Thundering Fury, and of course probably go with Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers as a weapon. To be fair, for the Eutila comp, I mean, Yae is competing with who? Lisa? Right? Like, that's a normal team comp. Eula, Raiden, Lisa, and Diona. And honestly speaking, there's like upsides to like Lisa over Yae, which is crazy, because of course Lisa does give defense shred. Now of course Yae also gives tenacity, which is really good and stuff, but I mean, she's not way better than the 4-star option as a 5-star, and you have to build her pretty well to really give her the sub DPS damage that she needs. It's kind of a, if you're really deep into the game, you can probably do this team comp, but I mean, there's no reason not to just use the Lisa comp still, so yeah, it's a little bit awkward. So, of course, I always try to showcase the character as a main damage dealer, kind of, and she's definitely not the main damage dealer in the Taser comp here, but she deals more than in most other comps, right? She isn't necessarily being carried by any character in particular, but the culmination of the characters in this team, they're just really strong in general. And if I'm being honest, once again, you should probably just build a more support-oriented Yae for this team comp, right? Have your Thrilling Tales, have your Tenacity. It will work pretty decently. This team, I mean, I don't have an actual healer, right? So it's really annoying for most people to play this team. So you can play Kokomi, obviously, but I just wanted to keep this team 4-star, so I subbed in Xingqiu. And of course, using Xingqiu and Fischl, we're gonna really abuse that C6 Fischl and the Xingqiu with normals being spammed by Sucrose, and then yeah, that's just a ton of damage. Once again, Yae isn't necessarily amazing on this team comp. Better options than her. Raiden's probably better, right? It's just, I don't know, she works fine on this team, but once again, just better options out there. So I think at this point, you can probably tell I'm not that enthusiastic about Yae, and it's really because her role has kind of already been filled by Raiden. And Raiden just generally does it better, right? Raiden does an insane amount of damage. She batteries for the whole team. She's just kind of incredible. Yae, of course, has high field time, so she doesn't quite work as a really low commitment sub DPS, and that kind of sucks. And of course, it's difficult for Yae to beat Raiden, honestly. It's really hard, but it's probably possible, right? It requires such a specific scenario. Either it's like a super specific team comp that really needs Yae's cooldowns to line up with everybody else, and Raiden's cooldowns just don't line up quite as well, right? And even then, I'm not sure if Yae beats Raiden at that point still, but possible. And then of course the other possibility is of course with some hyper carry DPS where you can't really afford to use Raiden fully because you're going to lose too much DPS on your actual DPS. So maybe Yae is better there, and you can have turrets dealing like 10, 15, 20k damage off field. Pretty good, but yeah, overall, I think Raiden is just a far better character than Yae. It's just not very close. Yae and Raiden pair together very well, so there's that. But I think that the times I've played Yae without Raiden so far, it feels pretty bad overall. And the real problem is that Raiden's rerun is literally next banner. So I'm not sure if you don't already have Raiden, you should even consider Yae at all. Unless you can get both, then that's fine, I guess. But there's no reason to get Yae over Raiden, in my opinion, unless, you know, you got some sort of bias, right? Like you really like Yae's character design or her playstyle, whatever it may be. That's of course always a valid reason to pull, but if you're looking for a character that's actually really strong, I mean, Raiden's just simply better than Yae overall, I think. And it's hard for me to recommend Yae over Raiden in any realistic scenario. Well, what can I say about Yae? I mean, she's usable, but I don't think she's particularly strong. A new artifact set, of course, could change that. I think she could be pretty decent with new artifact set, kind of like Albedo, but 2 attack percent, 2 Thundering Fury just isn't particularly strong, honestly. And honestly speaking, when that artifact set does come out, she'll probably get a rerun, so just roll for her then. So one of my many problems with Yae is that you really have to invest a lot into her for her to be pretty good, and there's just better sub DPSs to invest in, honestly. Characters like Raiden, right, and Xiangling, they're just more impactful for that investment, so I would just go there for the investment. And here's the thing, as I've been saying, Yae is an electro sub DPS. That role is, I don't know if saturated is the correct word, but it's definitely filled, right? We have characters like even Fischl, and of course not even talking about Raiden, it's just not a particularly unique asset to use on the team, and it doesn't really change the way you're building these teams. And because of that, I don't think she's going to bring anything to the table for most players. It's very rare for you to be able to use Yae in a spot where you can't use any of the other characters. It would have to be such a specific scenario that I just don't think it's very realistic. Regardless, Yae just doesn't have the legs to be impactful, I think. She just needs more, or she needs to be different. And either way, that's just not something she has access to. I think to make things even worse though, Raiden's rerun is this patch, which means that, I don't know, like, why would you get Yae if you can just get Raiden? Or if you already have Raiden, what's the point in getting Yae? And of course, if you already have Raiden, I guess Yae feels decent with Raiden, and that's cool, but where is it necessary to run Yae on a Raiden team? Like, Raiden doesn't need Yae. She can use Xiangling instead on the national comps. She can support Eula and have, Lisa instead of Yae. There's just no comp where Yae actually makes a difference in my opinion, so it just doesn't really make any sense to me. There's just no unique teams that Yae enables, and of course, maybe somebody's more creative than me out there, right? I'm not like a particularly creative team builder. My builds are pretty standard, I would say. And maybe somebody can get super creative and have a very interesting Yae team, but for now, I don't see it happening. I haven't seen anybody doing that, and it just doesn't seem like Yae has a very good spot in the game. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Like if you liked, comment down below if you have anything interesting to say, subscribe to my channel for more Genshin Impact content. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.